Nordenby. That matter has been adjourned, will not be heard this evening. If you're here for a matter that's listed as a public hearing, we ask you to please fill out one of these yellow cards in the back and bring it up front. We'll call you up to speak during that presentation. We remind applicants to keep their presentations to 30 minutes or less, and we ask those from the community to keep their presentations to 3 minutes or less. That being said, would everybody please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, 1056 Motor Parkway Associates LLC, PB 2022-029, southwest corner of Long Island Motor Parkway, County Route 67 and Wheeler Road, County Route 17, Central Islip, 1056 Motor Parkway. Applicant requests a modification of Planning Board special permit conditions associated with PB 2004-047 in order to reduce the number of parking stalls provided on site. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the board. My name is Hansley Mohan, Brown Altman DeLeo, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, 1056 Motor Parkway Associates, in connection with the property located at 1056-1074 Motor Parkway in Central Islip. At the outset, I'd like to thank the board for hearing our application. And as a general housekeeping matter, I'd like to note that all mailings and postings for this hearing were performed in accordance with the town code, and all required proof of notice has been submitted in advance of tonight's hearing. With me tonight is Douglas Baji of DRB Architect PC, the project architect, and Ethan Chikoski of Atlantic Traffic and Design, our traffic expert. The resume for each expert has been submitted in the exhibit packages provided as exhibits 1 and 2 respectively. Both of our experts are here and available to answer any questions that the board may have. By way of background, the property, which is located in the town's Business 2 zoning district, has been used as a one-story building with retail stores since October 26, 1983. The area surrounding the property is comprised of various commercial and residential uses. To the north of the property across Motor Parkway is a BP gasoline service station located in the Business 1 zoning district. Northwest of the property is a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant also located in the Business 1 district. To the east of the property across Wheeler Road is a Bank of America with a drive-through ATM. West of the property are several residential properties located within the Residence A zoning district. Abutting the property to its south is a large shopping center which contains a clothing store, laundromat, dollar store, supermarket, and is also located within the Business 2 zoning district. We would like to note that a cross-access agreement for ingress and egress was entered into between the prior owners of the property and the adjacent shopping center on October 12, 1982. A copy of the agreement has been provided as Exhibit 2 in the package provided. On February 3, 2005, the Town Planning Board approved an application for a Planning Board special permit to allow the use of the Subway's restaurant at the property. Condition number 6 of the Planning Board special permit required that the site maintain a minimum of 54 parking stalls. Following receipt of the Planning Board special permit, the town's engineering department issued a letter on July 1, 2019, requiring several revisions to the original site plan. A copy of the July 1st letter has been submitted as Exhibit 4. In order to address the engineering department's comments, the site was reconfigured in a way that required the elimination of several parking stalls. Under the original Planning Board approval, the site was required to maintain a minimum of 54 parking stalls. Under the current site plan, a total of 47 parking stalls are proposed. A copy of the site plan has been submitted as Exhibit 5. Tonight, the applicant requests Planning Board approval to amend the conditions of the previously issued Planning Board special permit and for a new parking relaxation for the property. Before I turn the podium over to our design professionals, I would just like to note for the record that we received a copy of the proposed Planning Board conditions in connection with tonight's hearing. We have reviewed the conditions with the applicant and have 2 comments. First, we note that Subway's has recently made efforts to expand its selection to include breakfast foods. Given that such offerings are best sold during the morning hours, we respectfully request that the board consider altering the proposed hours of operation to that of similar nearby breakfast food stores. For example, the Dunkin' Donuts at the northeast corner of Motor Parkway and Wheeler Road opens at approximately 5 a.m. according to Google. In order to compete and in an effort to conform to the surrounding area, we request the board permit the restaurant to open at a similar time. Second, number 3 under the site plan modification conditions requires that the owner agree to a permanent cross-access and shared parking agreement in perpetuity with the owners of 146 Wheeler Road, Central Islip. As stated previously, a cross-access agreement in perpetuity has been in place since circa 1982. Requiring that a shared parking agreement with the adjacent property owner be executed and recorded places an onerous burden on the property owner. As will be discussed in further detail by Mr. Shikoski, our traffic expert has conducted an analysis of the available parking supply and determined that the proposed quantity of stalls is sufficient to accommodate the observed parking demand. Given that the adjacent property owner has no stake in the application currently before the board, there can be no guarantee that such an agreement can be secured. Thus, conditioning an approval on the execution and recording of such an agreement would be oppressively burdensome to the applicant. Accordingly, we request that this condition be removed. At this time, I will now call Douglas Vaji to the stand to discuss the site layout in further detail.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Douglas Vaji, DRV Architect PC, 1180 Park Avenue, Franklin Square, New York, 11010. Good evening. The purpose for my iteration here is based for the most part on the fact that engineering had issued that letter back in 2019, and we needed to respond to their requests. There was a list of 5 items on that list. The main item was there was an existing non-compliant ADA ramp to the west side of the building, and there was a dumpster location over there that needed modifications. As we got into it, the property on that side of the building actually slopes away from the building, so to put the ADA ramp on that side wasn't going to work. What we ended up doing was we shifted it to the east side of the building, created 2 ADA parking spaces with an ADA compliant access aisle. Also on the east side of the building, there were containers on site that are not in a dumpster enclosure, so we accommodated that at the same time. So between the ramp on the west side needing to be removed, we also then widened the sidewalk along the front of the building to be ADA compliant for egress and exit from the storefronts. So with all that, we lost those 5 parking spaces.
The only question that, Mr. Frugari, do you want to ask your question?
The attorney during this presentation mentioned that the cross-access easement would be onerous on the property owner. Yet on the site plan, you do have 10 parking spaces that are off-site. They're on the adjacent property. Is there any agreement that locks that in? Because that's 10 of your 47 spaces.
So we're not aware of any written agreement between the property owners. We can confer with our client to see if they have. Oh, they're on the same. Okay. So we can confer with our client to confirm, but as I'm being advised by our traffic expert, the 10 parking stalls are not part of our parking count in our study.
Maybe my math is wrong, but as I count the number of parking stalls on your site proper, you need the 10 parking spaces to come up to your 47 spaces.
So I will refer to Mr. Shikoski of Atlantic Traffic and Design.
If I'm wrong, please clarify, because
Yep.
if you already have a substantial parking shortfall using those 10 spaces, that parking shortfall gets even worse without those 10 spaces. And I'm missing, because I got 22 up front. I got 5, so that's 27. I got 3 on the side, so that's 30. Then I got 4, that's 34. And then another 4, that'd be 40, 47. Yeah, 47. That's 47 without the 10. Yeah. Yep.
Sorry. I'll just start. Ethan Chikoski with Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering, with a traffic and parking expert. I think we're on the same page now, right? We have 47 without the.
We got 47 without
Yep.
the 10.
Okay. I did the same thing first time I looked at the plan. So just since I'm up here, we did do a parking study at the site. Given that it's fully occupied, we felt it a good idea to go out there and actually count the parking and observe the parking demand for this site rather than using ITE or some other, estimation. So based on our parking observations, we found peak demand of 39 parked vehicles on a Saturday midday. And with the 47, that would leave in a reserve capacity of 8 parking stalls, or about 17% of the site. So if there are additional questions, I can bring back the architect.
My questions are just on the parking part of the cross-access agreement. I'm not sure if other board members have questions at this point. So if you'd like to, is there anything further in your presentation? before we
No,
go to
that
staff report?
basically summarizes.
So why don't we do the staff report and then we'll come back and talk about parking?
Great.
Does that work? I do not have any yellow cards for anybody who came in from the community wish to speak. Did anybody come in later wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to ask Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of Motor Parkway and Wheeler Road in Central Islip. In 2004, the property obtained a special permit for a subway, which required 54 parking stalls to be provided on the site. Unfortunately, the restaurant never obtained a CO, but filed for a certificate of compliance in March of 2021. The permit has not yet been issued because the property only maintains 47 parking stalls. So tonight, the applicant is looking to modify this requirement, which is 7 stalls short of the original approval, bringing the overall parking relaxation for the site to 41%. The site overall is in pretty good condition. However, some aspects of the original approval have still not been met, like landscaping the concrete islands and providing masonry dumpster enclosures. In addition, it is important to note that the property does have cross access with the property to the south, which could help alleviate parking issues if they were to come about. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which requires cross-access and shared parking with the property to the south and requires installation of masonry dumpster enclosures and increased landscaping. If the board feels the shared parking is not required, we can also strike that from the conditions.
So, I mean, the hours for the breakfast hours, I don't think there's any objection from the board, so I think that condition. In terms of the parking, unless you can somehow prove to us this evening that the 47 spots is sufficient for that shopping center and staff agrees with that, I would, our standard condition is that there's a cross-access agreement in place. I would not be willing, I'm only one board member, but I would not be willing to waive that this evening. I would then ask the reserve so you could talk to planning staff to see what you can come up with. So I don't know if the board feels differently on that. It seems to be the consensus. So if you want to try and, explain to us why the 47 spots are sufficient with the use in that shopping center, we're happy to listen and make a decision based upon that, or we're happy to reserve and let you speak to planning staff.
I guess I would just, Ethan Chakosky again with Planning Traffic. I guess I would just clarify that when we did the parking study, we did evaluate just the parking on site, for this site, and that demand that we found out in the center was for our parking on site and not for the lot to the south. So, based on our study, it had sufficient demand with the 47 stalls.
And that's with 100% occupancy and the current tenants in there?
I believe so.
Is the current tenant in there right now?
Yes.
The one that you're seeking approval for?
Yes. That's my understanding.
Just a clarification, there's a cross-access easement in place now?
I think that's a question for the attorney, but I believe so. It's just not.
Okay.
So we reviewed, recorded, in the sub-county clerk's office is a recorded cross-access agreement for ingress and egress between the two lots, but the agreement makes no mention about shared parking.
Just cross-access?
Yeah.
From my position, I would ask that staff review this with you. It's obviously a change to our normal protocol in terms of how we approve these. Does anybody, any further questions from the board or any disagreement? Mr. Moriarty? Mr. Moriarty, Mr. Brown?
Ms. Wozniak, are there any violations on this property?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can check the fire marshal's office and get you a report.
Okay, thanks. Before we vote, I'd like to see that information. All right, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yes. I did listen to you. They say you have a cross-access agreement, but it's not for parking. It's just for access to and from.
Correct.
So you have nothing in writing or nothing that in concrete that gives you the 10 spots to add to it. So my suggestion is going to be along the lines of the chairman that, in my opinion, that we reserve tonight to give you an opportunity to maybe secure a cross-access agreement or talk with planning staff and see what else we can do. Because as of right now, it's a substantial decrease in parking.
Thank you.
And I'd also say that if there is no cross-access agreement related to parking, that you probably should remove the 10 spots that you're using. I mean, you're only counting 47, but to show them as 57 is a little misleading if there is no agreement on that. So I would work with Ms. Wozniak and see if we can come up with and we can bring you back on.
Okay.
Is there a motion? Oh, and Mr. Moriarty, Mr. Colvin just looked up. There are no open violations on this. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the hearing and we reserve decision on this hearing.
Thank you. It's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing on reserved decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Item 2 on the agenda, planning board application public hearing. Ahmed Ajor, PB 2022-031, southeast corner of Montauk Highway, New York State Route 27A and Maple Avenue, Bayshore, 6 East Main Street. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a restaurant in the business district pursuant to 68-257.1I. Site plan modifications may be requested as part of this application. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Pablo Rodriguez. I am an engineer. I am representing here the tenant, Ahmed Ajor. He is requesting a special permit for a coffee shop. We have spoke to the planning board, and they say based on the size of the tenant space, over 2,000 square feet, this tenant application is going to be considered a restaurant, although it's not a restaurant. It is a coffee shop with maximum of 16 seats.
Thank you. Anything further you want to add?
Well, the existing tenant space is a commercial or second story, 2-story buildings, multi-tenant building. The specific space that we are seeking a special permit is currently used as a hair salon. So we feel that going from a hair salon to a coffee shop pretty much, is within the vicinity of Main Street, downtown Main Street. It is a minimal impact in terms of parking space based on the current, and it fits the description of all the spaces and the businesses in the area.
Thank you. Why don't we hear from the community? We'll have a staff report, and then we'll come back to you with any questions we have.
Sure, thank you.
I have, looks like, is it Todd Reeder or Riedel? Riedel?
Good evening. On behalf of the community and communities in the surrounding area, coffee shops are a great gathering place. They keep young people off the street. They reduce the amount of people going to bars and drinking and driving. And it's really a community establishment. The tenant in this particular location has another location where he literally closes the store for business on Thanksgiving and opens up free food to anybody in the neighborhood, whether you're wealthy or poor or having a good day or a bad day or you're all alone. He provides a place for somebody to come and not have to deal with whatever all of us are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. This particular applicant is a tremendous asset to every community. When you drive up and down the streets of Bayshore or Islip and you see an empty store, it has that depressing feeling. And I don't think any small, quaint town like Bay Shore should have empty spaces. The particular location that this gentleman is trying to build his store at has been out of business for some time. COVID destroyed the owner, and the store was vacant. It was being vandalized. It had people in the back parking lot smoking and drinking, and having a tenant there is definitely necessary. It's really all I have to say. He has another location also in the town of Islip. Feel free to stop in there and see what he has created. It's not just a coffee shop, it's a community gathering. People have actually gone there and made friends. I'm a vendor to the applicant, and when I went there for the very first time, I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw people sitting down, introducing themselves to each other, and actually making plans to meet there again. I've never seen anything like that. I'm in the business for 18 years. I sell to a lot of other establishments in the town of Islip and Bay Shore, and nobody has created what this gentleman has created. I've never seen it in my 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Miguel Prieto?
Hey, sorry, good evening. Sorry if I'm a little nervous. My family has owned this property. I'm at 97 Belford Avenue in Bay Shore. I'm a graduate of Bay Shore High School. I remember when Bay Shore was a rundown town. Even the Bolton Center was a porn theater, as many may know. What the gentleman wants to open out is opportunity for people for employment, and the student to come in there and do their homework, have a cup of coffee, and just bring a good environment.
Just state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Sharon. This is my husband. We live in Bayshore for over 20 years, and it's a great thing seeing Bayshore coming around. It's a lot of buildings, a lot of new stores, and it's a shame to see stores that are being closed. I understand COVID have a big impact in the whole economy, Bayshore and all the area in Islip. As a homeowner, I'm super happy to have this coffee shop coming to our town. The owners are great people. Like the prior person mentioned, they are all about community and helping the need and anybody that approached them. So not only is going to be a great asset for Bayshore to have people who really want to do things for the community, but also for the business environment. I'm all about business and having people to come to Bayshore and see what we have to offer. I have to say.
And pardon me, again, like we say, we're happy to see Bayshore turn around to what it's become as what it was before back in the 80s. And as a homeowner, I don't want to see that go back again. And like I said, the gentleman's going to provide opportunity for employment for all of the youth and everyone. And what can I say? Yeah, we're happy to have them in the area. We're happy at the other location that they receive us. And what can I say? God bless America and God bless us all.
Thank you. John is Desa? Desa?
Good evening, gentlemen, gentlewomen of the planning board. I'm a long time, in fact, my whole life, I'm an Islip resident. And it's nice to see government in action. This is what it's all about. This is great. Tiger and Gisette have become personal friends of mine since I started going to the Milano Bean Cafe, I'd say, right after the COVID kind of subsided, like a couple of years ago. I'm in there like, oh my goodness, 4 or 5 times a week. A typical thing you would see in there is high school kids coming with their laptops, having a latte or a smoothie and doing their homework. I've seen nurses from the program at Southside Hospital, Northwell now, nurses meeting there, studying for their college courses and interacting with each other. I've met people that in fact, I went to this school as a kid. I went to 6th and 7th grade here. This is awesome being here. I met people I haven't seen since I went to high school. I graduated in 71. And I ran into people now that I haven't seen in 50 years. It's a wonderful thing. People come into this place. It's a boon to the community. You know what I describe? You remember the TV show Cheers, where everyone knows your name. They're always glad you came. It sounds like a cliche, but that's the Milano Bean Cafe. We have vibrant discussions. Sometimes people come in, they bring a guitar, like the Greenwich Village coffee shops. They start strumming the guitar and people singing along. It's a wonderful thing. They're a boon to the community. And what they've done in East Islip, I have no doubt they would create that same wholesome family atmosphere in Bay Shore. I mean, that's what you would want for Bay Shore. And as far as look, if there's other coffee shops in the area, well, hey, look, competition is a good thing. How many gas stations are there in the town? There's banks in Islip, one on each corner facing each other. Restaurants, I think there's more than 1 or 2 bars and restaurants in Bay Shore. Competition is the American way. It's good for everybody. It makes you step up your game. Okay, a new guy's opening up. Hey, we better do a little better to compete with him. That's the American way, man. And Tiger served in the Army. He's a veteran. He served this country proudly. And you guys would be doing a great benefit to the community of Bay Shore if you allowed them to offer their coffee shop. Which, by the way, I think it said on the docket a restaurant. It's not a restaurant. They're not looking to cook steaks and burgers there. It's coffees and muffins and lattes. Okay, well, thank you for your time, everyone. God bless everyone.
Thank you. Those are the only cards I have. Did anybody come in later wish to be heard? Come on up, sir. Just leave us the card and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tarek Farag. First of all, I'd like to say that I have been a volunteer. I served the communities in various ways. I'm a former auxiliary police officer. I'm a former Rikers Island police officer. I'm a former whistleblower against the New York City Police Department Organized Crime Division and a whistleblower against the U.S. government, Department of Justice, MDC, Brooklyn Federal Prison, as well as a whistleblower against the Board of Elections and illegal dumping off Exit 15. I'd like to say that this community, this neighborhood, is in desperate need of stores that will bring and unite families together. Unfortunately, I have personally observed a number of illegal establishments, from smoke shops to illegal massage parlors to numerous establishments that fail to have not only handicap access or handicap bathrooms that clearly violate disabled veterans or people with wheelchairs. There is a desperate need to have locations and stores that will bring family members and children to a safe environment. Unfortunately, there are way too many bars here that have caused a lot of problems, and it's a benefit to have a family, as this gentleman, to bring in a store that's going to unite children together or family members together and provide a safe, healthy atmosphere. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the southeast corner of Maple Avenue and East Main Street in downtown Bayshore, and it's improved with a 2-story building. Tonight, the applicant is looking to convert a former salon on the first floor into a coffee shop with 16 seats. The unit's approximately 2,300 square feet and will need a slight parking relaxation. The site itself is in great condition and seems to be in substantial conformance to the most recent approved site plan. In addition, the use is consistent with uses supported by planning in downtowns. Therefore, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I just have two questions. One is, what is the occupancy that you'd be allowed in the establishment?
The occupancy, there's two approaches. One of them is going to be based on Suffolk County Health Department, which only will allow 16 seats in the to be considered a wet store. As far as building code, I do not have that number of hand, but I think is 100 square feet per person. Should be around 24, 25 based on building code for the tenancy.
All right, and based on your experience with your other establishment, what type of occupancy do you typically have?
So again, I think you're going to have some peak hours. People are going to start like lining up to get coffee, and so at peak times you may have pretty close to the maximum allowed occupancy load of the building. But for most of the day, it's going to be on and off, and perhaps in the morning and in the afternoons. That's where people tend to gather the most to get the coffee. You're going to have a full business, a full occupancy.
All right, and the other question, so absolutely, because it was originally listed as a restaurant, so there's no alcohol. You have no alcohol license or everything for the establishment.
No, it's like the gentleman said, it's going to be plain coffee, muffins, and lattes. That's pretty much the extent.
Further questions from the board? I support the application. I just want to point out one thing. If you're putting 16 seats on there and you want to do more, I think under the code, you're probably entitled to more. You should list them now so you don't have an issue. They have to come back before us in terms of a larger parking relaxation or something else we're addressing it this evening. So
Yes, we are working right now with the Suffolk County Health Department, and we're also working with Suffolk County DPW to see if we can actually get that number increase a little bit, since we are connected to sewer.
So, you want to stay down there? Okay. So, are there any further questions from the board? We have one proposal. I'll let Mr. Frugieri make the motion on this.
What type of seating count are you looking for? Because I see you have 4 tables of 16 seats, but then there's a big vacant area. You're probably going to put some couches in there to make it a...
Well, the space was a little bit larger than Tiger originally wanted. It was definitely a larger space to accommodate perhaps more seating. Yes, at the other location, he does have a couple of couches, but again, that may add just 1 or 2 more seating areas, but it's not going to be the entire space filled with all kinds of seating.
Okay. I understand that with the Suffolk County Health Department, 16 is the magic number of seats. After 16 seats in a restaurant, the sewer flows or sewer allocation goes up considerably. As long as you work that out with the health department, I personally don't have an issue with the number of seats up to a certain point. And I don't think anyone on this board might have that. So I'm trying to come up with a number that we can approve tonight so you don't have to come back to us, subject to the Suffolk County Health Department approving your seating count. So if we added another 10 seats, 12 seats?
I think that would be perfect. Again, that would be consistent with the estimated occupancy load based on building code, which will be around 23, 25.
Up to 32, another 12. Okay, so we'll...
Mr. Frugieri, want to make a motion?
Yeah, so we'll add another 3 tables. So that'll be
Just double the seats.
double the seats? Double the seats, 48? 32?
32.
32, okay.
Subject.
Yeah, 32, 16 and 16. Tonight, I'm not on my man. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing and grant this application. Just changing the conditions. Just changing the conditions to state no service of alcoholic beverages and seating up to 32 seats, subject to the approval of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services.
So motion by Mr. Frugiero to close the public hearing and grant the application, subject to the covenants and restrictions, adding no alcohol, as well as doubling the seats from 16 to 32, subject to county health department approval.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brown, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thanks so much, members of the board.
Item 3 on the agenda, Planning Board Public Hearing, Anthony Tartaglia, PB 2022-032, northeast corner of Montauk Highway, New York State Route 27A and Park Avenue, Bay Shore, 55 West Main Street. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a bar and outside rooftop seating and bar service pursuant to 68-257.1 M and N respectively. Site plan modifications are requested as part of the application. Good evening. Good evening. If you want to wait 2 seconds for everybody to leave the room, and then we'll start. Thank you. If I can ask everybody to just step outside so we can start the next hearing. Thank you.
Oh, it's the second rooftop.
I love the idea.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just love to see somebody come flying off.
You see this? Now look at these residents over here.
I just don't see somebody flying off.
Clean up the roof. Great. Look at this.
Whenever you're ready, go ahead. Thank
Going
you.
back here.
Thank you, everybody. My name for the record is David Bush,
Yeah.
registered architect. Office is at 90 West Main Street in Bay Shore. Tonight, we're here for the application at 55 West Main Street, Bay Shore, special permit number 2022-032. The application before us was a special permit for the conversion of existing restaurant bar to Peninsula Fusion Restaurant on the corner of Park Avenue and Main Street to a new bar restaurant use. Within the new application, we're seeking the occupancy of the footprint of the existing ground floor of the restaurant, in addition to the second floor occupancy to provide for a covered rooftop bar and outdoor
Isn't
seating.
this the Chinese restaurant?
Yes, it is. The existing property and zoning, the property is currently zoned business district. The existing building is a 2-story multi-tenant building with a restaurant bar use, with 2 restaurant bar uses on the Main Street side and a medical office to the north. The tenant space within this application is the current Peninsula Restaurant as mentioned. It's approximately 6,513 square feet, has been in this space since 2005. The existing space has a full kitchen, seating, bar, and approvals for an occupancy of 242 persons for the Town of Islip Certificate of Occupancy. The current space also has a current seating approved for 160 seats as per the special permit, PB 2003-33. As well, providing for the existing space, there is an existing approved 3,000-gallon grease trap that's approved by both Suffolk County DPW and wastewater management. The proposed application is for the space of the ground floor with the addition of second floor outdoor space to create a Mexican style restaurant. Excuse me. So to summarize the application, if you look at sheet A1.1, which was submitted with the application, it demonstrates the 6,513 square foot of the ground floor with a full alteration, providing for a new kitchen and equipment, new dining areas, new bar areas, fireplace and feature elements, and a Main Street facing atrium, atrium space similar to the Verde room at the Verde restaurant on the east, the south, and the east end of Main Street on the south side. To provide access to the second floor, there's 2 egress stairs and an elevator, which will provide for the code compliant access to and from the second floor. plan has been reviewed with the town of Islip, building official for egress and occupancy, as well. We've been in review for the seating and occupancies with the planning department. The proposed new second floor, which is represented on sheet A1.2, is approximately 890 square feet of roofed over program. This is broken approximately 50%. 50% of it is elevator and stair, roofed over areas, bathrooms and service areas. And then the other 50%, approximately 940 square feet, is a roofed over bar area. And there's an unroofed open seating area of approximately 1,125 square feet. In review of the proposed seating, the proposed new restaurant will have a reduced seating capacity at the ground floor, going from 160 seats to a proposed 140 seats, 144 seats, and a proposed 66 seats at the second floor. It's a total of 210 seats that's proposed from the original 160. With the increased seating, we have a requirement of 1 space for every 2 seats. There's a parking increase of only 25 spaces. In review of the parking availability, if you look at the cover sheet of the submitted set, SP1.1, you'll notice that the building itself is outlined in the orange graphic, the orange dash graphic, and immediately to the west, we actually have Bayshore Main Street's largest municipal lot, immediately to the west, and a second municipal lot immediately to the north, both of these, if you will, touching the boundary lines of the building. The proprietors of the proposed restaurant live within the Bayshore Bright Waters community and are committed. They know the business, they're great operators, have a history of no problems at their existing restaurants. They're the same owners that currently operate Verde, Coastal, Bright Waters Inn, and other unique hospitality venues such as the Shoreline Trading Company that offers catered cruises of the Great South Bay. They're invested in Bayshore, passionate and successful, and they propose this endeavor. I turn your attention to the renderings. With the investments made to the ground floor, gut renovation for the kitchen and ground floor space, they're also remaking the building in terms of its exterior facades, providing as well for the second floor rooftop occupancy. So again, a substantial improvement. The idea of the building is natural and organic materials, wood veneer, terracotta brick, wood pergola details, and others. The main Verde room, which faces the main street, will be very similar in idea, concept in terms of floor finish, plantings, herbs, etc., to the Verde restaurant, to the south space of the Verde restaurant, which is on Main Street currently. Thank you for listening. I'd be happy to address any questions you have.
Thank you. I don't have any cards on this application. Anybody wish to be heard on it? Not seeing anyone. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located on the northwest corner of Park Avenue and West Main Street in downtown Bayshore, and it's improved with the 47,000 square foot commercial building. Tonight, the applicant is looking to obtain a special permit for a bar and outside rooftop seating and bar service, which would replace the current Peninsula Asian Fusion restaurant. The proposed plan shows substantial facade renovations, 144 indoor seats, which includes 2 bar areas, 66 rooftop seats with an outdoor bar and fireplace, and a few sidewalk tables and chairs along Park Avenue. This would be an increase in 56 seats from the previous restaurant use and will warrant a further parking relaxation. This is the second application for a rooftop bar and seating heard before this board, and noise continues to be a prominent concern, especially given the apartments directly across Park Avenue that would look down onto this rooftop bar. In addition, the applicant has expressed interest in possibly having outdoor music, which has not been permitted by this board before. Typically, special permit conditions prohibit outside entertainment, and our zoning code prohibits outside speakers. Given this, planning has prepared conditions that limit the number of seats on the roof to 66, which is about half of the permitted indoor seats, and have further limited hours of operation beyond what the code permits to 12 a.m. In addition, the standard condition that prohibits outside entertainment has been added, but if the board feels some types of music could be permitted, staff could draft a condition to replace the standard one.
Mr. Bush, my only question is, I'm just looking at the rendering on the right there, and I know possibly the landlord next door is here, but what does this do in terms of decibel level for the apartments that are across the street on the second and third level?
So
And the
it's a
impact.
great, it's a great question, right? And if we look at just, for instance, passenger car on the street, and let me state for the record, I'm by no means an acoustic engineer, but I did take a look at some, facts and findings on Google in preparation for some of the questions. So we take a look at a passenger car traveling on Main Street at a distance of 25 feet away from the building. So if it was passing Village Place, which is the building on the west, it has an approximate decibel rating of 70 to 77 decibels. If we look at a living room music, or radio, or TV, a vacuum cleaner, that's a noise of about 70 decibels, so at a comparable level. The conversation in the restaurant, office, background music, air conditioning is approximately 60 decibels at 100 feet. And again, that's what my quick research provided for. So the discussion of I'll say music or noise at this location is relative to the request for number one. I wanted to clarify two things. We did take a quick look at the CNRs. Thank you, Kelly. One of the questions is to be assured that the limitation of music or noise is relative to the rooftop and not the ground floor space, and that's the way I interpret item 3. Right. The second question would be with the proposed rooftop bar, and if you know the proprietors, the Tartaglias, and the restaurants that they do run and operate, etc., there are no violations. There's no current violations. There's no outstanding violations. Their hearts are in the business. They are at their businesses, and they are running and operating them. They've got a strong interest in Bayshore and Brightwaters and Main Street. They live here. The children go to school here. So it's not like this is being outsourced from someplace else. But relative to music, I think one of the things that we also, we enjoy when we go out to dinner sometimes is just some soft background music. So there's two opportunities I might request of the board. One is just that, the opportunity for background music, which has no higher decibel rating, particularly with the distance it is from Village Place, than a car passing by has a limitation in terms of decibel rating. That's certainly something we'd look to in a request. Secondly, would be the addition, if we could, 1 to 2 small acoustic performers, not a band, not a live band, no loud outdoor DJ, no flashing light systems, etc., but something to set an ambiance for an evening of dining amongst the stars. That's a sincere request.
I mean, I certainly have, without the acoustical expert, I have the concern about the rooftop one of the noise. Adding on music and live entertainment to me would even make it worse without hearing something or seeing something from an acoustical expert. And I also just, question the fact if people over there have the windows open or if they even have their shades up or something like that, what are people directly across at that level looking into those units? Again, if it was nothing, I mean, we know the applicant, obviously we like the applicant, he's done great work, he has great establishments. My concern is just what it does precedent-wise, if in fact it is a problem that we permit the rooftop next to apartments versus permitting it next to other commercial establishments. That would be my one concern without seeing something from an acoustical report. Mr. Brown?
If I might comment to that.
Absolutely,
I
yes.
appreciate it. And I do, and I can respect that. Certainly, one of the other things we should recognize about the apartments across the street is that it is a Main Street fabric, right? So, and in fact, the half of that building which sits to the south sits over the Salt and Barrel restaurant, sits over restaurant itself, which also has permits for outdoor seating and outdoor seating at its footprint and stuff. So that restaurant accommodation, be it underneath or across the street, we're further away across the street than we are at the sidewalk itself, adjacent to the Village Place.
Yeah, I
Ms.
just
Brown.
want to follow up with the questioning that the chairman was pursuing. My concern too is the rooftop, and it's not the music. I think we can, with covenants and restrictions, we can come to terms with that. But the wall that you have along Park Avenue on the rooftop, how high is that?
As a minimum by code, it would be required to be 42 inches. I think what we'd be looking at is probably something, I'm going to guess 48 inches, a little bit higher than
So
that. So it'd be-
it's not going to screen people from looking across the street into the apartments, because that is my concern. You have beautiful apartments across the street. I have an apartment there. I don't want people looking at me. I don't want to have to close my shades and everything. I want the windows open to get light into the apartment. So is there a way we can screen that?
Well, I think again, relative to that aspect of it, we do have apartments which are located on the ground floor buildings at Main Street. And we also have, directly across the street, in this case, the Village Place on the south side, we have second floor office space, which looks across at those apartments. So again, it's a commercial building use. This building also does have partial second floor use on the north end of it, which is medical use. So there's existing windows there. All of the, I can't speak and say all, but there is a vast majority of apartments on the second floor along Main Street that have secondary views in them, be it from
Right.
across the
This is
street.
our second application for a rooftop restaurant slash bar. So my concern still remains that it should be screened from anybody being able to look across. And I don't think it's something hard to do, but I think it's something we should look at.
Yeah. Further questions from the board? Mr. Moriarty, and then Mr. Cruz,
yeah.
and then Ms. Cruz.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just as a matter of precedent, I'm concerned about this second floor, and I realize there are other commercial uses and second floor windows, but this is an outdoor bar. I mean, it's clearly different than anything else that the surrounding community would, or an apartment user would be expecting to see across the street. That's number one. Number two, I really do believe the board should be looking at some sort of sound studies on these. I'm concerned not just about the ambient music. I'm concerned about there's 66 seats up there. Trust me, there's going to be another 50 plus individuals standing around in a bar itself. That tends to be a lot of noise, much more noise than an acoustic guitar. So I think we should think seriously about if we're going to be looking at outdoor bars at sound issues. So we have more than just anecdotal evidence or information brought to our attention. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz.
Hi, I just wanted to also mention that one of the things that I was looking for was some sort of screening, because even though, okay, you're on the second floor, you're above, you're living above restaurants, you still want some sort of privacy, especially because if you're standing around drinking at a bar, you're going to look around, you're going to look to see what's going on. And that's what the rooftop allows you to do, is to look around and be outside. And you did mention there would be no DJs, and I would assume that there's no mariachi band, as this is a Mexican restaurant, right? That's going to play up on the top of the rooftop with, so I just want to make sure that there's, I do like Mexican, and I do love a mariachi band. If it was down on the first floor, I don't have a problem, but I do have a problem on the rooftop, because I think we have to be very, very careful on how we set the precedents on all of these rooftops that are going to start popping up.
Any further questions from the board? Mr. Ruggiero?
While I share the concern of the privacy and the rooftop and the noise, this is also giving a very unique character to the Bayshore community, and I think it's something that the Bayshore community needs. And I think with some thought, we can come up with some covenants, maybe some design changes to accommodate some of the concerns that have been expressed tonight. I know my daughter lives in Battery Park City in Manhattan in a beautiful apartment. The walls are glass windows, ceiling to floor, wall to wall, and it looks out at the Hudson River, but it also looks out at an apartment building right across the street. When you're there, you could see right into all the buildings, and people live with it. It's becomes the way of life. But here, part of the beauty and ambience of a rooftop is to be able to see all the activity on the street, on Main Street, and all around. But at a certain hour, the people that live in the apartments next door deserve some type of privacy. So I'm wondering if there's some type of screening that could be motorized that goes down at a certain hour that you could work into your design. There's maybe different hours of operation for the rooftop that are a little more restrictive so that it lessens the noise. I know we try to encourage outdoor seating. Outdoor seating by itself is going to have a louder noise level than indoor seating would, but it gives the character to the Bayshore community. So while we're not going to have all the answers tonight, I think if we put our heads together, we can make this what I think is a good application even better.
Any further questions from the board? Would the applicant like to add anything further?
I hear the board. I'd be happy to work with the planning department further on a couple of the design items and come back. So if we reserve decision, if you have to come back in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty?
Yes, I'd make a motion to close the hearing this evening and reserve decision to allow staff to work with the applicant in resolving and addressing some of these concerns.
It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to reserve decision and
I'd make
close
a
public
second.
hearing and reserve decision.
I'd make a second.
Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions were reserved. Thank you. Item 4 was adjourned. Item 5 on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Town Board application public hearing, Islandwide Permit Services, CZ 2022-034, northwest corner of Washington Avenue and Campione Street, supposed to be Champion Street, Brentwood, 16 Washington Avenue. Applicant requests to change the zone from Residence B to General Service T in order to permit a general office. Site plan modification request as part of the application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, planning staff. My name is Kevin Guilfoyle. I'm here with my partner Len Crick of Islandwide Permit Services to present our change of zone application. The subject property, according to building department records, was first constructed back in 1955 and received a CO for a 1,008 square foot, one-story building. Subsequently, in 1962, a two-car garage was added to the back of the property in 1962. The current dwelling right now meets building department requirements as far as the COs for the expansion of the garage and, of course, the main dwelling. My client, Dr. Margarita Pasquale, had owned this property since the 1960s and utilized it as her office. She's a doctor, medical doctor, since early 70s and probably going back to the late 60s. She's up there in years now, and her son contacted me and said that he had thought that everything was legal, and I said, no, it's properties in B residential zone, and you're operating as a medical office. That's not the proper zoning. You would have to go for a GSD or a GST zone, and subsequently we're here. The subject property is roughly now about 500 foot north of Suffolk Avenue, a major east-west thoroughfare, close to convenient to major transportation routes. Furthermore, the property directly south is Zone Business 1, and the other property diagonally south, located on 12 McWhorter, I think was just received a GST designation a few years back. We feel that this particular home, since it has a history of being used as an office, would probably be an ideal candidate for the GST zone, and I would welcome any questions.
Did you just, my understanding there's an accountant's office in there. Are you saying there's a medical office in that building?
It used to be a medical office, Dr. Margarita Pasquale.
Okay, no longer is, so now it's going to
No.
be, and we're not talking medical going forward.
No.
I don't have any cards. Anybody wish to be heard on this application? Anybody here wish to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to ask Mr. Colgan to give us a report. We'll come back for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to legalize an office building. I believe we're an accountant. The subject house, again, was constructed back in 1955. The general service T-zone is generally preferred in a transitional location with a side yard adjacent to a commercially zoned property and another side yard adjacent to a residential district. The subject property is adjacent to a business one property and diagonal from another GST property, the latter which received a change of zone back in 2016. The site has a residential appearance with a concrete driveway and an asphalt parking lot. Consideration should be given to making the parking area one cohesive material so that it does look less commercial. In addition, some of the parking area closest to Washington Avenue should be removed to improve motorist safety. Lastly, a single row of evergreens should be planted along the western property line, space permitting, to afford some buffer to the residents to the west. The planning staff's primary concern is not setting a precedent for other residential properties in the area to convert into businesses. Several homes on the east side of Washington appear to have been illegally converted into businesses, where business signs and large front yard parking area lots have been observed. It was the opinion of the planning department that these other homes are not in transitional locations and should not be permitted to convert, barring a comprehensive planning effort that might recommend otherwise. So at this point, the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision to go over design improvements with the applicant and carefully write up covenants and a resolution to distinguish the subject application from others that might pop up in the area.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No, sir.
So I just agree with Mr. Colgan. I mean, this one is obviously located next to Business One. There's a GST in that area as well, but there are quite a few others when I spoke to Mr. Colgan about this on Washington Avenue that are supposed to be residences and they're not residences. And if we are going to approve this one, if we can agree on the terms based on some of the recommendations Mr. Colgan made, I think we just need to make sure we're distinguishing this from the other properties around, because I, for one, am not willing to rezone the entire Washington Avenue in that area when you get residential into either Business One or general service or the like. So I think that's where we're at.
Yeah. But this is very close to Suffolk Avenue. It should get some
Yeah,
consideration.
it's just getting further and further away from, and you're getting, there are some others that are right directly across the street that I don't think are properly zoned, that are being used for different purposes. So that being said, is there a motion? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing and to reserve decision.
This is a motion by Mr. Brown to close public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brown. All, Mr. Bruno, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We're reserved. Town Board application decision item, D&G Realty Ventures LLC, CZ 2022-024, north side of Union Boulevard, County Route 50, between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, Bayshore, number 46-52 2nd Avenue, number 55-63 3rd Avenue, and number 1779-1805 Union Boulevard. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business District, Business 3 District, and Industrial 1 District to all Downtown Development District in order to construct a mixed-use building consisting of 14,000 square feet of commercial space and 132 senior apartments, and an apartment house consisting of 24 non-age restricted apartments. Site plan modifications are required as part of this application. Good evening, Mr. Gargano.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As the roll call indicates, this property is an assemblage of parcels that begin on 3rd Avenue and Union Boulevard, continues north to the Long Island Railroad tracks on 3rd Avenue, continues east along the Union Boulevard to 2nd Avenue, and then returns north approximately 3/4 of the way to the Long Island Railroad tracks on 2nd Avenue. The parcels include multifamily houses, single-family houses that are rented. Some are two-family, some are single-family. They're all non-owner occupied houses in various states of exterior condition. The majority of the property is occupied by a retail and wholesale fence company that sells and wholesales fence products out of their yard and has significant outdoor storage components throughout the property. There's also two commercial buildings on the corner of Union Boulevard and Third Avenue, which have residential above them. So the application, as indicated, has a mix of uses already. The as of right zoning is industrial B1 and I believe B3. And what I'm here tonight to represent, because we had our public hearing several months ago. At that time, we gave a full presentation with the architect and the handouts, and we have since been back once for a decision meeting, and both times the board had asked for a reserved decision so that we can continue to study the application, as it's an important application for the town of Islip and of course for downtown Bayshore. So in overview, what we're asking for tonight is for the planning board to recommend approval of this to the town board for a change of zone. And what we're asking the planning board to basically do is recognize and approve this project for the following reasons. Number one, it provides a significant redevelopment of a blighted assemblage of parcels along the Union Boulevard corridor. Mainly the Union Boulevard corridor has a variety of different architectural uses, but nothing significant, nothing stands out as being appealing. It's all development work that was done many, many years ago, and it's kind of a hodgepodge. This particular location, and given the frontage along Union Boulevard, is a great opportunity to really tie everything in architecturally and create a streetscape that is appropriate for what's going on in the downtown Bayshore area now. There's a lot of good stuff happening, and this further strengthens that curb appeal and architectural aesthetic along the corridor. So we're asking the board to approve it based on that reason. We're also asking for an approval tonight because we're providing senior housing primarily for the housing stock. The majority of the rental units are senior, and that is an underserved market in the town of in the hamlet of Bayshore at this time. Among the multiple projects that have been developed over the last 5 years, only one is a senior community. And we believe that there's not only a need, which has been demonstrated through Suffolk County, Nassau County, and all the hamlets and all the townships within Long Island, but it's also a product that would be well received in the downtown Bayshore area as well. So we're asking the board to approve it based on the senior housing component. We're also asking the board to understand, based on the information provided at the public hearing, that we're providing a favorable traffic outcome to not only what is there now, but what could be there in an as-of-right development. We provided a yield map showing a significant amount of commercial, medical, retail development potential on the property, which consists of approximately 5.5 acres. Provided traffic impact analysis between the proposed uses and the as-of-right, and it's a favorable outcome for the proposed use. So we're asking the board to approve based on that. We're asking that this be reviewed and approved also based on the fact that this particular development will strengthen and continue to strengthen the downtown Main Street business district. And what's going on now is, as we heard from earlier applications this evening, there's a consistent flow of new energy and new interest in either upgrading existing business operations within the downtown or creating brand new ones. As one exits, another one comes in, perhaps a more exciting one. We heard that twice tonight with the Verde application just before, and also the Milano Coffee proposal, which, as a landlord and resident within the town of Hamlet of Bayshore, I believe both will be a positive outcome for our community. We're also asking that, as consideration for an approval tonight, that it be known that within the property we are providing our on-site parking consistent with the DDD at prior approvals, and we're seeking no relaxation on parking. And we understand as an applicant that two of the primary concerns within the downtown Bayshore area as it continues to show positive redevelopment is parking concerns and traffic impacts. So again, just to reiterate, both the traffic impacts and the parking are positive with this application versus the as of right. So it's for those reasons, those simple reasons, that we are here feeling comfortable and responsible about this application. We also want to emphasize the fact that we believe a residential development will have a more positive outcome to the downtown district than the as of right as it relates to spending power, foot traffic, and to keep our businesses that are opening up and have opened up already, to keep them strong and healthy. So it's for that reason that we are here again tonight to request that the board grant approval.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was reserved at the October 12th, 2022 and January 4th, 2023 hearings. The primary concerns at those times were the traffic impacts and the architectural renderings in the context of the surrounding neighborhood. The traffic analysis was reviewed by the town's traffic consultant. He determined that eliminating several access points on all three frontage roads and limiting site access to a single driveway on 2nd Avenue and on 3rd Avenue will reduce the number of potential conflict points and help smooth traffic flow on adjacent streets. The relatively small amount of new traffic generated by the proposed project can be readily accommodated on the local streets. The urban-like architecture has been modified to encompass a more traditional residential look in an effort to better blend in with the surrounding neighborhood. Given that the applicant has satisfied several of the criteria of the downtown development district and will be replacing blight with a complementary use for downtown Bayshore, the staff recommends that the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Brown.
Yeah, Mr. Gargano, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the architecture and everything from our first original meeting and everything. You did a super job, Larry.
Thank you.
This is absolutely
To
great.
Dave Bush and his group for executing a great plan.
Yeah, and 2nd Avenue, it just has a nice residential feel looking across the street from the other homes now. And that's it. I really like the project. It's a really good project for the neighborhood. You're cleaning up a blighted area, and I'm very happy to support it. I do have another question for you. It's on the application before us, because you did bring it up and everything. What is your opinion of the rooftop bar as far as noise and net looking across to your apartments?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. So the first and foremost, I agree with some of the comments that were made by Dave Bush during his presentation, that we are in an urban fabric, and having activity is not necessarily a negative. It could be a positive, particularly as the owner of the building next door where the apartments could potentially be impacted. What makes me most comfortable with the proposal is the hours of operation. Because when an establishment is closing at 12 o'clock or 12 a.m., what that means is that they're starting to wind down. The owners know that they're closing at 12. That means staff is starting to wind down at 11, 11:30. It's last call. Everything is starting to go down to zero. And with Salt and Barrel, which is the restaurant below the apartments at Village Place, they also have a similar time curfew of 12 a.m. And if you drive past there at 11 o'clock, 11:30, you'll start to see it slow itself down. So I'm encouraged by that time frame, and I'm not concerned that the rooftop would be a negative to the apartments that are facing it. I do believe certain screening methods would be advantageous, possibly green screenery with plantings. I haven't had a time to really look carefully at the roof plan, although I think the building itself is going to look beautiful if they do that. So I'm, as an owner of that building, I'm not opposed to it as long as the hours of operations are held, and I believe the owners would do
Well,
so.
maybe we can do something with the hours of operations to distinguish the rooftop from the interior too.
Yeah. I mean, in any event, in any establishment that would go onto Main Street, if it's going to have a bar component, I think the hours of operation are important, because what that tells me is that they're going to start winding down at 11:30, 12 o'clock, not ramping up until 2 a.m.
Right.
And that's a whole different crowd. That's a dinner crowd that's having a dinner at 9 o'clock seating, and by 11 maybe they're going up for one cocktail and they're leaving, or something to that effect. Or it's an 8 o'clock dinner crowd and they're sitting on the rooftop while their seat is ready. It's a different atmosphere than something that's open till 2 a.m. Creates a whole different environment.
Okay.
That's my
Well,
opinion.
As the name of the restaurant says, good for all. So, any more questions?
Anything further from the board? Is anything further from the applicant? Ms. Moriarty?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to raise an issue. I agree completely. I love the project. I think it's a great redevelopment of a blighted site. I think it's something that Bay Shore, I think, really does need. I nevertheless continue to have a concern about timing, and we talked about this at the last hearing, and I think there are arguments on each side, clearly, and it's not a black and white area, but we've approved a significant number of projects in the Bay Shore area. I think significant redevelopment has occurred, and it continues to be very positive in Bay Shore. But I, again, remain concerned about approving large projects, given all of the other units coming online in the next few months. And my only concern about the project is, frankly, timing. But it is a significant reservation, and I continue to hope that we look at the overall redevelopment of Bay Shore and some of the taxes, or not taxes necessarily, costs, but the taxing of infrastructure and other resources in the Bay Shore area. And I'm concerned about that from that perspective. I have significant hesitancy to approve this given the timing right now. So I just wanted to be clear on that. I do support the project. I think it's a great redevelopment of that site. But from a timing perspective, I remain concerned.
I appreciate that, and I respect the board's concerns. I just, again, want to remind the board of what I said at the last meeting, is that we have properties that are going to be developed. And it's really a matter of, if we could get rid of the psychological component of another apartment complex, and we strictly look at it as something has to go here, because it's going to be land that's going to be redeveloped, just like where Shoregate is being built now. While it's an extremely large project and it's all one particular product type, it was 10 acres and it was going to be developed, and it could have held 250,000 square feet of commercial medical space, which would have had its set of impacts to the infrastructure and parking and what have you. So it's really just a matter of taking a look at the proposed versus the as of right and seeing where that falls before we get caught up in not another one of these again, not another one of these again. That's just my own feedback on that, but I appreciate and respect your comments.
Mr. Brewer?
I am in favor of the project, Mr. Gargano. I want to thank you and Mr. Bush for the architectural development as you've moved along on it. I just want to make a point that in general, and I think I may have mentioned this, I think I did in the first hearing, is that I generally am concerned about going north of Union Boulevard because in many areas that is residential. However, let me be clear, you're clearly redeveloping a blighted site, and you do in fact have the railroad, which acts as a very hard line for further development. So on that basis, I'm not concerned about this particular area. There would be other areas north of Union that I might see a problem with, but I'm saying in general, I believe it is appropriate to do it here.
I appreciate that. And we took that to heart when you brought it up last time, and taking a look at just the overall perimeters, if you will, of downtown Bay Shore, and looking at it on an easterly and westerly location, and then on a northerly south. I agree with you that the hard line of the railroad tracks works out well. And this property also lies within the east-west kind of coordinates of Main Street. So anything much further east or much further west would probably fall outside of it. And even with that said, being that we're on the north side of Union, where, as I mentioned once before or twice before, on a percentage basis, we're respecting that fact, and we're not tapping into the maximum allowable for the DDD. We're probably 30% or 25% less per coverage than, say, anything on the south side.
Ms. Frugieri?
Just listening to Mr. Gargano, he brings up a very interesting point with regard to traffic. Not all traffic is equal. When we take a look at applications, we don't look at the total amount of traffic that'll be generated by a project. We look at the peak hour of traffic that a project would generate. And if you compare this proposal with the majority of age-restricted houses to, let's say, a 250,000 square foot medical office building, in the medical office space, all the employees would come in on during certain shifts. So those peaks would be very, very intensive. With this project, you have a majority of the units being age restricted. And while you might have an increase in traffic flow, that increase in traffic flow is spread out throughout the workday and throughout the evening as well. So it doesn't have the impact, it doesn't stress the intersections, and the levels of safety tend to be about the same.
Thank you. Mr. Matamor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 or 3 thoughts and comments. First of all, to say that I'm in favor of the project and have listened to everything that's occurred in the last few weeks and thought back to the 80s when the DDD was first conceptualized, and feel that this project seems to continue a lot of the thoughts that were brought up in the 80s as far as the revitalization of Bayshore. Also found very helpful Mr. Gargano's insights with regard to the rooftop situations. With regard to that, I think it's important that it starts to put a new face on Bayshore. What new face that may be is significant and important, that it's done in good taste, that it's done with all the considerations that we've discussed the last time around, and with Mr. Gargano's input. He certainly comes here, and I like to use this expression, with a very sincere and good reputation in all the projects that he's done, and he's done quite a few, as we all know. His professionalism and design work and maintaining of his properties is really, I think, as good or better than anybody we could think of. So he comes to here with great credibility that not only will he build it, but he'll build it in the spirit that we have discussed. It's a challenging time, but I think it's a consistent one with regard to the town of Islip's planning department and what the planning department and the planners have done over the last literally 40 years is to follow through on this, but do it in such a way that it doesn't get out of hand or become a problem. And I think this is an excellent example of the efforts that were done, particularly by Mr. Gargano's organization, but in conjunction with the planning staff and planning department. So I'm in favor of it. I'm one of several who would be happy to make a motion when the chairman decides to call for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matamor. Anything further from the board? I just want to say, Mr. Gargano, when I vote no, you'll understand why. Same thing. I think it's a great project. I like the way it looks. I think it cleans up that area, but similar to what Mr. Moriarty said, my concerns are the 400 plus apartments coming online across the way from it. Again, I did go through the traffic study after our last meeting. Might have more questions regarding passerby traffic versus destination traffic and some of the other possible uses that would go there in terms of cars already driving by, where they'd just be pulling in and pulling out versus drawing new people in. I also might be alone on this one, but I also starting to look at Bayshore as becoming too many apartments in Bayshore and possible needs for other things to be put in downtown Bayshore, becoming overpopulated with apartments. And then lastly, I just point out, I know we did a lot, and I've been part of that, transit-oriented developments and how they're good, but I ride the train every day to the city, and I can tell you that I no longer have a problem finding a parking spot because nobody's on those trains, and I no longer have a problem getting a seat on those trains because nobody's on those trains. So I think certainly transit-oriented has changed. What's unfortunate for me is I think this, from what you've done and the change you've made based on the board's recommendations or that they put before you at the public hearing, which I wasn't here for, but I did read the minutes, is probably one of the better looking projects that will be approved, and it'll be approved this evening in downtown Bayshore. So I commend you on doing that, but I just wanted to put on the record where I stand so you understand the position on it. That being said, is there a motion?
Thank you.
Mr. Matamor?
I would move to close this hearing and grant the application, and with the thanks to our planning staff and to Mr. Gargano for the work that's gone into it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Matamore to grant the application. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brown. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I would move to close the evening and adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Matamore to adjourn, second by Ms. Cruz. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you.